He thought leaving the house would bring peace. The packing a suitcase and walking out the front door would calm the storm. But the moment he left, the court didn't see a father trying to be reasonable. They saw a man who abandoned his home and his children. That single step turned into the most expensive mistake of his life. Custody? Gone. Money? Drained. Don't move out yet. Don't give them the weapon before the battle begins. Because once you leave, you can lose everything. If you're a father facing divorce, listen carefully. This channel exists to reveal the traps no one warns you about. Subscribe now before you make the mistake you can't undo. And leave a comment if you've ever seen custody or money vanished after a man walked away. Your story might save someone else's future. Mark stood in the hallway surrounded by silence. His children were asleep, the house filled with toys, drawings on the refrigerator, and the ghosts of happier days. He thought he was doing the right thing. His wife had told him, "If you leave, maybe things will cool down. Maybe we can keep it civil." He believed her. He believed leaving was an act of peace. But divorce is not peace. Divorce is war dressed up in paperwork. And every decision you make can and will be used against you. Mark didn't know that yet. The first money trap was hidden in plain sight: the house itself. For 10 years, Mark had paid the mortgage. His paychecks kept the roof over his family's head. Every Saturday, he cut the grass. Every winter, he shoveled the driveway. To him, the house was more than bricks and wood. It was proof of his work, his sacrifice. But the moment he walked out, the court no longer saw him as the homeowner. They saw his wife as the primary resident. And in custody battles, the parent who stays in the home is seen as the stable environment, the one providing consistency. By leaving, Mark gave his wife the advantage of permanence, and with it, the leverage to claim not just the house, but custody rights. Suddenly, the years he spent paying for that mortgage didn't matter. What mattered was who stayed. Mark signed a temporary agreement to pay half the bills until things were final. He thought it was fair. He was still sending money every month, still covering the mortgage. But in court, the narrative shifted. His wife's lawyer argued, "She lives in the home with the children. He voluntarily left. He abandoned stability." That one decision, walking out, turned his financial contribution into evidence against him. This is how the trap works. Moving out of your home can be twisted into abandoning your family. Judges don't see the sacrifice. They see absence. They see a man who left his kids in the hands of their mother while still paying the bills like a visitor funding someone else's life. Mark thought he was showing respect. The court saw surrender. And then came the second money trap: time. Time is everything in custody. Every overnight, every weekend, every school drop-off adds up. Courts don't just count money, they count hours. And the parent with more hours almost always gains more rights and more financial support. By moving out, Mark gave up hours without realizing it. His children stayed with their mother by default. Every night he spent in a rented apartment was one less night with his kids. Every missed bedtime was evidence. The longer he stayed away, the stronger the case against him grew. One evening, his daughter asked on the phone, "Daddy, why don't you live here anymore?" He didn't know how to answer. How could he tell her that leaving was supposed to make things easier, that he thought it would keep the peace? He couldn't. And in court, that question would hang over him like a shadow. The truth is brutal. The moment a father leaves, he turns custody into an uphill battle. Even if he pays the bills, even if he shows up every weekend, the narrative shifts. The mother is seen as the full-time parent, the father as the visitor. And with that perception comes money. More child support, more expenses, more leverage, all stacked against him. Mark didn't understand. He thought his lawyer would protect him. But even lawyers sometimes miss the traps, or worse, They expect you to learn the hard way. His wife's lawyer didn't miss a thing. Every move Mark made outside that house was ammunition. And then came the day of the hearing. Mark sat in the courtroom, hands clenched, waiting for his turn to speak. The judge looked down from the bench, calm, almost casual, and asked the question that froze his spine. If you no longer live in the home, why do you believe custody should remain equal? In that instant, Mark realized the mistake. His good intentions had been weaponized. The step he thought would end the conflict had opened the door to losing everything he cared about most all. And this was only the beginning, because the third money trap, waiting just around the corner, would hit him even harder. Not only would he risk losing his children's time, he would be ordered to keep paying for a home he no longer lived in. That's when Mark understood moving out wasn't peace, it was surrender. But by the time he realized it, the damage had already been done.
Mark sat in that courtroom, realizing his mistake was already written into the record. The judge's words echoed in his mind. If you no longer live in the home, why do you believe custody should remain equal? He wanted to shout the truth, that he loved his kids, that he only left to avoid conflict, that he still paid for everything. But none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was perception, and the perception was that he had walked away. But the damage went deeper than custody. The third money trap was waiting, and it would hit him harder than anything before. It was called temporary support, but there was nothing temporary about the weight it placed on his shoulders. Within weeks of moving out, the court ordered Mark to continue paying the mortgage on the family home. After all, his wife and children still lived there. On top of that, he had to cover the utility bills, the groceries, and provide child support, even though he was now also paying rent for his small apartment. In other words, he was financially responsible for 2 households, but only allowed to live in one. This is how the system works. Once you leave, you don't just leave the house. You leave leverage. By staying, you can at least argue for shared expenses, for fairness, for balance. But once you walk away, the court sees you as the provider from the outside, the man funding a life he no longer lives. Mark thought it was temporary, a few months maybe until the divorce was finalized. But temporary stretched into a year, then longer. Every month, his paycheck vanished before it even hit his account. His wife's attorney argued that he had established a pattern of support, proof that he could afford to pay more. By the time he realized it, what he thought was a stopgap had become permanent evidence. He would sit alone at night staring at the bills. Rent for the apartment? Due. Mortgage for the house he no longer lived in? Due. Groceries for 2 households? Due. And child support on top of it all. It didn't matter how many hours he worked. It didn't matter how much he sacrificed. The money flowed in one direction, and none of it flowed back. And all of it began with that one step, leaving the house. The emotional cost was even worse. Every time he dropped his children off, they would wave from the window of the home he had built, the home he no longer lived in. "Why don't you stay, Daddy?" they would ask. How could he tell them the truth, that the law didn't care about love, that the system saw him as a visitor, that his decision to walk out had turned him into an outsider in his own family? Mark began to realize something he wished he had known from the start. Moving out doesn't look like compromise. It looks like surrender. And surrender in divorce is not rewarded. It is punished. His wife's lawyer used it masterfully. He left, the lawyer repeated in every hearing. He chose to move out. He chose to leave the children in her care. He has demonstrated that she is the primary parent. And with every word, the judge nodded, because on paper, that's exactly what it looked like. Mark tried to fight back. He produced receipts, pay stubs, records showing how much he had paid for the house even after leaving. He thought the court would see his sacrifice as proof of his dedication. But the court didn't see sacrifice. They saw obligation. They saw a man doing what was expected while the mother provided the daily care. That's the brutal truth most fathers don't hear until it's too late. Every step you take outside the home is another nail in the coffin of your custody rights. Every dollar you pay while living somewhere else becomes evidence you can afford to pay more. The more you give, the less you get back. And the irony? Mark had left because he thought it was the noble thing to do. He didn't want his children exposed to arguments, didn't want them to see anger in the house. He thought leaving would reduce the conflict. Instead, it created the perfect narrative for his wife's attorney. A husband who abandoned the home, who left his children behind, who now owed more because he gave up his leverage. Mark's story is not unique. It happens every day. Men across the country pack their bags thinking it will make things easier, not realizing they've just made the hardest battle of their lives unwinnable. They move out, and suddenly custody shifts, money drains, and the court sees them not as fathers, but as outsiders. But here's what Mark wished he had heard before he left. Don't move out yet. Don't give away the one advantage you still have, because once you're gone, you can't take it back. The lesson is simple but brutal. If you are facing divorce, stay put until the court tells you otherwise. Protect your custody, protect your money, protect your leverage. Moving out might feel like peace, but in divorce, peace is just another word for defeat. Mark nearly lost everything, his children's time, his financial security, his dignity, because he didn't know the rules of the game. But you don't have to repeat his mistake. So if you're a father watching this right now, hear me clearly. Don't move out yet. Not until you understand the traps waiting for you. Not until you know how the system twists your decisions into weapons against you. Subscribe to this channel. Every week we reveal the traps no one talks about, the mistakes that cost fathers custody, the clauses that drain their money, the moves that turn love into leverage. Leave a comment if you've seen this happen to someone you know. Your story could be the warning another father needs to save his future. Remember Mark. Remember the house he paid for, the nights he spent alone, the question his children asked that he couldn't answer. And remember this, the system is not designed to protect you. It is designed to exploit your silence. Don't give it your silence. Don't give it your surrender. And above all, don't move out yet.